Hello, everyone, and welcome to Women of Grace. I'm Johnette Williams. It's an up close and personal with Dr. Kathleen Raviele, a recently retired obstetrician gynecologist of 33 years who based her practice on Catholic moral teaching and has volunteered her services as the medical director of a pregnancy aid center. She'll tell us about the challenges facing Catholic doctors today in light of cultural issues and their impact on the medical community. Catholic doctors are facing unprecedented challenges today, and here to tell us about them is Dr. Kathleen Raviele. A past president of the Catholic Medical Association, Dr. Raviele based her obstetrics gynecologist practice on Catholic moral teaching and continues to consult and collaborate about fertility-based methods of family planning through FACTS, a group of physicians, healthcare professionals, and educators who provide information to the medical community about natural family planning. Let's welcome Dr. Kathleen Raviele. Kathleen, welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Johnette. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, thank you. And it's a delight to always have you. And it's been some time since you've been here, but I am so happy we have this opportunity to talk about some really important issues, I think, that's facing the Catholic medical community. But, you know, I want to get to know you a little bit better in the sense of what it was that brought you into the profession that you occupied and how it was that you came to base your practice on Catholic moral teaching.
Well, I grew up in a small town in western New York State, Seneca Falls, which is actually the home of women's rights, which I find ironical, but I'm the oldest of 5 children, and when my mother was expecting number 5, she was very upset about being pregnant. And I became interested in obstetrics with her pregnancy. She had some complications, not because I thought women shouldn't have children or because they should abort their children. I wanted to help them to have a healthy baby. So fortunately, I went through secular schools, got into medical school, met my husband there. But interestingly, this was around the time of Roe v. Wade, but it was also the time when abortion was legal in New York State. And I worked the IV team when I was in medical school, and they were doing abortions at my institution. And I thought, well, geez, these look like nice girls. And my dorm representative had actually tried to abort herself when I was in college and got carried out on a stretcher and never returned. I don't know what happened to her. So the women's movement was very powerful there in making women think that abortion was okay. Then one day, my roommate and I, who was also in medical school with me, were at church, and we were at Mass. She was Catholic also, and some crazy man ran up the aisle and attacked the priest during Mass while he was giving a homily against abortion. Oh. And we looked at each other, and we thought we were in the wrong place. And we left the church. My roommate never came back to the church. She's Methodist now. So anyway, for the next 7 years, I was out of the Catholic Church. I went into an OBGYN residency where they were doing abortions. And I thought, well, I wouldn't have an abortion, but, you know, how could I stop somebody if they feel they shouldn't have a baby? But in my last year, my husband and I got pregnant with our first child. And I loved being pregnant. It just was wonderful. And then one of my fellow residents, his wife was pregnant. We were comparing notes all the time through the pregnancy. And then when I had the baby, I came back to work, and for the first time, I was in an ultrasound rotation, which was just in the Department of Radiology. It wasn't in the floor. It wasn't in the clinic. And I looked at these little babies under ultrasound and said, these are babies just like my baby at home. Oh my So I converted away and realized that abortion was clearly wrong. But then I went on to Emory, did a maternal fetal medicine fellowship in Atlanta, and then went out into private practice. Now, I wasn't involved in abortion, but 2 of my partners were. And then finally, when my children were in Catholic school, I got a newsletter home from school, and it said that Our Lady had allegedly been appearing in Medjugorje. And I looked into it to see what she was saying. And she was saying, pray the rosary every day, go to confession once a month, make the Mass the center of your life, read Holy Scripture every day, and make sacrifices and fasts on Wednesdays and Fridays. So we started doing that, and I started changing. And I started seeing things around me that before I thought were perfectly fine. Everybody was doing it, but I realized it wasn't fine. And then I had a clear call to go to visit Medjugorje, and I went with a group of about 90 Catholics. My children went with me. And there I talked to a priest about what I was doing for a living, that I was providing contraceptives, that I was doing sterilizations. I wasn't doing abortions or referring for abortions, but I was doing all these other things that everybody was doing. And he sat with me for 30 minutes and explained why this had been a constant teaching of the church since the time of Christ, that I needed to stop what I was doing, leave the group I was in, and go into practice by myself. And that's what I did.
Well, you know, what an amazing story. And there's so many pieces and parts of this. First, I want to comment on the fact that it was, you know, when you began to take that message of the Blessed Mother from those reported apparitions in Medjugorje to heart and began to apply them to your own life, that you began to see things differently. I mean, that's the work of grace, right? I mean, that's...
Oh, definitely. I thank God every day for having pity on me and showing me what I needed to change with my life.
Yeah.
All of us need to pray every day, Lord, show me what I need to change with my life.
Yeah. And then there's the part about the fact that you were in practice with people who were doing things that you weren't doing, but you were still doing procedures that were anti-life. You know, because tubal ligation is anti-life, right?
Right.
Contraception,
right.
Anti-life. And it was through that interaction with a priest that changed all that. But you know, what strikes me in that, Kathleen, is your docility. You know, I mean, obviously, putting into practice what our Blessed Lady was allegedly asking for. And how can you argue with prayer? How can you argue with the Mass as the center of your life? How can you argue with fasting? You can't argue with those things, right? You know, that built up within you a certain docility that when the priest says, you've got to stop doing this, you were willing to sacrifice your practice, your association in this practice.
Well, I received a signal grace with all that. I mean,
Okay,
he told me all that, and then I went to confession. And I really wanted to leave right away because I felt so unclean, so dirty, you know. And so many of us, if we've done things in the past that we realize, oh my gosh, those so offended God, we may be tempted to run away. Don't run away. God is there to help you. So for the next 3 days, while I was still in Medjugorje, I had this image in my head. I wasn't seeing anything, it was just in my head. I was standing on a plateau wearing a sackcloth dress. There was no one there. My husband wasn't there, my teachers weren't there, my family wasn't there. A bright light was shining down on me, which I realized was God, and I looked down and I could see the entrance to hell.
Oh my.
I saw a fiery furnace. So I understood, this is the decision that you're going to make. If you continue on this path, this is what you've chosen. This is where you've chosen to go. But I want you to change. And I came back and changed, because I certainly never intended to go to hell.
Well, no, that's
Not that any of us do.
not where we want to end up. You know, well, some people choose it. They say nobody goes to hell. God doesn't send anybody there. People choose it, and they choose it by their actions. But
that's right.
You know, I want to talk about that for just a moment here, because you know, when you talk about the mindset change that has to happen there, you know. When you were doing sterilizations and when you were prescribing contraception, were you aware of the church's teaching?
I was aware of it, but there weren't any Catholics around me that were practicing it.
Okay.
I just was aware of dissent. I had 2 other partners who had been ex-Catholics, who were ex-Catholics.
Yeah.
It was never mentioned in church.
Yeah.
I had a very good friend who was a priest who never said anything to me about it.
Yeah.
I talked to a couple of priests before I went to Medjugorje, and they just said, just do the best you can. No, people need to hear the truth. They need to hear, this is what you need to do. Don't worry about it. God will take care of you, which he does.
Yes.
So a month after I came back, the people in my practice were very upset with me. I was chairman of the department. I was number 2 in the group of 5. I owned 1/3 of the building. I walked out of the practice.
My goodness.
And I said, I can't stay here anymore. And so for the next 3 months, I started another practice, and God helped me with doing all of that. And then I was in private, just GYN practice. I couldn't deliver babies anymore because I was the only one who was not going to be doing sterilizations, and that's a big thing at the time of C-section. In fact, many women get coerced into a tubal ligation at the time of a C-section. But after about 2 years of just saying, I don't do this, I don't do this, I don't do this, I realized I need to do more to actually help. And so I trained to become a teacher myself, and I started teaching couples NFP. I trained in several different methods of NFP so I would understand all their charts when they came in. I helped the Marquette University College of Nursing develop the Marquette program that also uses a fertility